It happened in less than 10 seconds. Elena Hart, Senior Director of Contract Systems at Stratus Edge for over 2 decades, was holding a pen halfway through signing the most lucrative deal in the company's history. $3 billion. Months of work. Final approval pending. Then Cole Maddox walked in. No knock. No good morning, no smile. He didn't sit down. He didn't look her in the eye. He just stood at the head of the table in his perfect blue suit and said the words that would erase 21 years of loyalty. "You're done, Elena. Effective immediately." At first, she thought he was talking to someone else. Her? Fired? In front of junior counsel, finance, and 2 external partners? No HR. No warning. Just silence and the sting of humiliation so sharp it felt like a blade pressed to the spine. She looked around. No one met her gaze. Not Kelsey from legal. Not Jamal, her own project analyst. They all stared at their notepads like they'd rehearsed this scene without her. Cole went on calm, practiced, arrogant. "We're restructuring. We need leaner systems, fresh perspectives, fewer legacy bottlenecks." Legacy bottlenecks. That was her now. Not a mentor. Not the architect of the digital signature platform they still use. Not the woman who flagged a $700M fraud attempt last year. No. Just obsoleta. She could feel her pulse pounding in her ears. One moment, she was securing the company's future. The next, she was just a discarded name badge. What would you do? What would you say if everything you built was dismissed with a smile? If you've ever been cast aside, like you never mattered, if someone made you feel like the room moved on without you, drop a comment below and say, "I'm still here." You're not alone, and Revenge Tales sees you. Because Elena didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply slid the unsigned contract into her folder and walked out. But that was the moment something else began. Something no one in that room saw coming. And trust me, Cole Maddox had just started a countdown he couldn't stop. Elena didn't slam the door. She didn't argue. She didn't ask why. She just walked. The conference room fell away behind her like a scene fading to black. Her heels echoed against the polished tile floors, steady, not rushed. In one hand, she still held the folder thick, warm from the printer, with the last draft of the Helion Aerospace Agreement tucked neatly inside. In the other, nothing. Not anger, not defense. Just silence. She stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut with a soft, mechanical sigh, sealing her off from the betrayal upstairs. And in that sterile chrome reflection, staring back at her, something inside cracked not loudly, but deep. Quiet, private, and irreversible. She had built her career the same way she built systems: precise, invisible, and unfailingly loyal. No Ivy League credentials. No mentors whispering shortcuts. She started at Stratus Edge as a contract assistant in her 20s, fresh from community college, while her mother mopped those same halls on the night shift. Elena used to wait for her in the empty office after hours, pretending to file paperwork so she could read through real contracts. Clause by clause. Line by line. She learned faster than anyone expected, and no one saw it coming until she was already indispensable. From assistant to analyst. Analyst to compliance lead. Then to international deals. Then strategy. Then executive. She survived 4 restructures, 2 hostile takeovers, and a federal audit that almost grounded their entire aerospace division. She was the one who flagged the forged vendor signature that could have cost them $900 million. And now, she was no one. 21 years, gone in a single sentence. Her badge still hung from her neck, like it hadn't received the memo yet. Her reflection didn't look different, but everything felt wrong. The elevator opened to the lobby. She stepped out into the morning light cooler than she expected. A security guard glanced up, confused for half a second, but didn't stop her. Maybe HR hadn't updated the system yet. Maybe the world hadn't caught up to what had just happened. She kept walking, past the front desk, through the rotating glass doors, into the wind. She didn't know where she was going. Not yet. But she knew one thing. They thought she was finished. They thought she'd leave quietly, maybe take a severance, fade away into irrelevance, a name no one would remember by Q3. But what they didn't know, what Cole Maddox never bothered to ask, was that the system he just tried to claim had something embedded deep within it. And it didn't answer to him. Not then. Not ever. For now, though, Elena kept walking. She walked like she had 21 years of dignity to carry. She walked like someone who had nothing left to lose. Except the one thing they forgot she still had. The key. Elena first saw him at the quarterly town hall. He wasn't on the agenda. He didn't have a name tag. He didn't need one. Everything about him screamed arrival. Cole Maddox walked in like the company already belonged to him. Tailored navy suit, sleek tablet instead of a laptop, no notes, just confidence. The kind that made people sit up straighter even when he hadn't said a word. He stood center stage and delivered a 10-minute talk titled Velocity over Preservation. The board leaned forward like he was reciting prophecy. The rest of the room watched cautiously. His title was new. Chief Strategy Officer. No one had held it before, and no one quite knew what it meant. But it didn't take long to figure out. Cole wasn't there to strategize. He was there to erase. At first, Elena tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Change happens. Leaders come and go. You adapt. But Cole wasn't here to adapt. He was here to gut everything that came before him. In less than a month, department heads started disappearing, some retired, some reassigned, some just gone. In their place, people from Cole's previous ventures. People who nodded too fast and questioned too slow. He canceled 3 long-term vendor contracts that had taken years to build. He cut legacy compliance reviews in half. He even suggested removing the contract verification step entirely. Isn't the whole legal review just formatting and common sense? He said, across a table full of attorneys who stared at him like he'd just spit on the Constitution. Elena remembered biting her inner cheek so hard it bled. Still, she stayed quiet. She had seen men like him before, fast talkers with perfect hair and no memory. But Cole was different. He wasn't just ambitious, he was surgical. He didn't want to lead the company forward. He wanted to pretend nothing that came before him had ever mattered. And Elena? She was the biggest reminder of what came before. He never said it out loud. He didn't need to. In meetings, he'd skip her in conversation, reframe her ideas as his own. He even referred to her once casually as compliance inertia. But he knew the truth. He knew she still had influence. That any contract over $1 billion had to pass through her system. That her signature wasn't ceremonial, it was functional. Required. He hated that. And slowly, the air started to shift. People began avoiding eye contact. Her name was left off calendar invites. Even her access to certain dashboards became restricted. She wasn't paranoid. She was being phased out. And when a $740 million deal nearly collapsed because Cole had insisted on speed over process, it wasn't his name in the internal review. It was hers. An audit log saved her that time. But it didn't matter. She knew he wouldn't stop until she was gone. He just needed the right moment. The perfect distraction. And now, she realized he'd found it. 2 months before Cole fired her, Elena almost lost everything. It started with a glitch. A minor delay in the approval chain for a $740 million vendor agreement. Nothing catastrophic, just a processing lag, a mismatched signature, and a missing timestamp that made the entire draft invalid. On the surface, it looked like a tech hiccup. But Elena knew better. She had built that system. She knew how each approval route was timed, how every authorization step logged its metadata within seconds. For that kind of error to happen, someone had to force it. So she dug. Late at night, long after the rest of the floor had gone dark, Elena stayed behind in her office with the blinds drawn, poring over server logs. It didn't take long to find what she was looking for. A user override. Accessed at 2 1:04 a.m. by someone in Cole's newly formed acceleration team. An internal memo had gone out weeks prior. Cole was streamlining approvals and experimenting with a parallel review process to improve velocity. No one questioned it, because he made it sound like innovation. But someone had bypassed the default contract path entirely. And when the deal failed, the blame landed quietly, cleanly on Elena's team. No one confronted her directly. There was no formal warning, no disciplinary meeting. Just whispers, tense glances in the hallway, a skipped invite to the compliance huddle. Even her junior associate stopped asking for guidance. Then one afternoon, an envelope appeared on her desk. No note. Just a folded packet of raw server data, highlighted. At the bottom, a single message from Brandon Lin, senior sysadmin. Check the override timestamps. They're setting you up. Her throat went dry. Brandon had been with StratusEdge for 10 years. Quiet, brilliant, loyal. He'd once spent 3 weekends rebuilding the backend after a ransomware scare. He wouldn't send this unless he was sure. So she did what she always did. She checked, line by line. And there it was. The mismatch. The unauthorized override. The silent reroute from a user who had only been granted elevated permissions the week before. Someone wanted that failure. They just didn't expect Elena to survive it. She didn't escalate. Didn't confront Cole. Instead, she took the findings straight to legal. Not to start a war, just to clarify. They nodded politely, thanked her, then shelved the report. No apology. No further discussion. Just silence. And that silence told her everything. She had become too visible. Too useful to be erased quietly, but too dangerous to keep around. That day, as she rode the elevator down from the executive floor, Elena didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just knew one thing for certain. Next time, they wouldn't miss. It started on a Tuesday. 3 weeks after the failed vendor deal and the silent shelving of her report, Elena sat alone in her office, staring at the contract routing interface she had designed over a decade ago. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, not typing, just thinking. She wasn't angry. Not anymore. Anger had burned itself out. What she felt now was colder, sharper. A kind of mechanical clarity that only comes after you realize the system is no longer broken. It's working exactly as they want it to. So she did what engineers do when a system turns hostile. She built a new one. Protocol E19 was never meant to be flashy. No big announcement. No emailed chain. No training session. Just one clause, buried deep in the back-end code of the contract authorization pipeline. It read like a conditional lock. If the initiating party of a $1 billion agreement is removed from the org chart prior to execution, the contract would self-void within 9 minutes. No alarms. No warning message. No override from admin-level accounts. Just a quiet, surgical failsafe. Silent. Permanent. She didn't call it revenge. She called it insurance. Elena had learned the hard way that systems are only as strong as the people they protect. And lately, the people at StratusEdge had stopped protecting her. She wrote every line of the protocol herself, reviewed it, tested it, then tucked it inside a minor security patch. She logged it under System Resilience, added 3 white papers as justification, and routed it for executive sign-off. It landed on Cole Maddox's desk 4 days later. He glanced at the title. Improved Digital Signature Integrity for High-Value Agreements. He didn't ask questions. Does it make us look more secure to the board? He asked, not even looking up from his tablet. It does, she said, calm and neutral. He signed. Just like that. He had no idea what he'd approved. No idea the kill switch was embedded. No idea that in signing the patch, he'd become the first executive in company history to co-sign his own containment protocol. And Elena? She didn't gloat. She didn't feel triumphant. She just felt ready. Over the next few weeks, she embedded the clause into every active contract over $1 billion. Quietly, consistently, without exception. She encrypted her digital signature into each protocol unique, unreproducible, stored on an offline key only she controlled. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even noticeable. It was just there, waiting. Because Elena Hart didn't believe in dramatic exits. She believed in contingency. And if StratusEdge wanted to treat her like she was replaceable, then they'd have to find out exactly the way systems DAO happens when you remove the architect without reading the blueprints. The sky looked too calm for what had just happened. Elena sat in her car, hands resting on the steering wheel like she wasn't sure what came next. She hadn't started the engine yet. The folder still lay across the passenger seat, crisp and heavy, the last physical copy of a contract that would never be signed. For a moment, everything felt suspended, like the air itself didn't know how to move forward. She leaned back in her seat, eyes half closed. And then, without warning, her phone vibrated softly beside her. She glanced down. System alert. Authorization. Token missing. Protocol E19. Engaged. 9-minute countdown initiated. Her breath caught. It had begun. Not because she triggered it, not because she wanted it, but because the system was doing exactly what it had been designed to do. It had detected her removal from the organizational structure. No valid replacement. No verified token. And now, the timer was running. 9 minutes. 9 minutes until the contract StratusEdge's most lucrative agreement to date would cease to exist. Silently. Completely. She stared at the screen. She could stop it. It wasn't irreversible. Not yet. All she had to do was call Bridget from legal. One voice authenticated override. One clause flagged for manual exception. She still had the access. Still had the authority. For a few more minutes. Elena opened her contacts. Bridget's name lit up the top of the screen, glowing soft blue like an open door she wasn't sure she wanted to walk through. Her thumb hovered. Then paused. Her iPad, resting on the seat beside her, buzzed. A new email. Subject line, Internal Transition Strategy. Zender. Cole Maddox. Recipient, Executive Leadership Team. And, for reasons she would never fully understand, or maybe because someone forgot to update the distribution list, Elena had been CC'd. She tapped it open. The body of the message was brief, polished, full of corporate pleasantries. Optimizing for efficiency. Legacy systems realignment. Stakeholder confidence. But one line, near the bottom, burned through the screen like acid. Elena was just a placeholder. Let's clean up her mess. She didn't move. She didn't blink. Just stared at that sentence as if it had hands and had slapped her. Placeholder. 21 years. 11 major partnerships. The contract system that kept them out of federal litigation twice. The digital seal now holding their $3 billion deal hostage. A placeholder. Her thumb slid away from the call button. She didn't delete Bridget's number. She just let it fade from the screen. She closed the email. Closed the contact window. Let the silence take hold again. Because sometimes, silence says more than any reply. If someone ever called your life's work a mess, if they erased your name but still tried to use your blueprint, what would you do? Drop a comment below and tell us. Even one word. At Revenge Tales, we know that some stories aren't about revenge, they're about recognition. 9:04 a.m. StratusEdge headquarters. 8th floor. The boardroom was humming with momentum. Cole Maddox stood at the head of the table like a showrunner on opening night, flipping through slides, gesturing with assurance. Behind him, the final partnership deck with Helion Aerospace gleamed on the wall-to-wall display. $3.02 billion, authorized and secured. Except, it wasn't. Michael Chen, the youngest associate on the legal team, sat 3 chairs down, frowning at his screen. Sir, he said hesitantly, digital validation hasn't turned green. Cole didn't even look. Probably a caching issue, he said. Override it and keep moving. Michael hesitated. I tried. It's not letting me. It says, token mismatch. Critical signature required. The room stilled for a beat. Cole's jaw flexed. Then get someone who can override it, he snapped, waving toward Britta, his executive assistant. Loop in IT. Now. Britta nodded, fingers already moving over her tablet. But her posture was tense. Rigid. She wasn't used to systems pushing back. No one in Cole's circle was. Across the hall, in a quiet ops room lined with monitors, Noah Delgadoon of the senior engineers who helped Elena design the digital seal protocols was watching a different kind of screen. Red flags were stacking. One after another. Mismatch. 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 Lockout. His gut tightened. He tapped into the source logs, scanned the metadata. 9:03:22 a.m. The exact time Elena had been dismissed. He blinked. The system had triggered exactly as designed. Protocol E-19 wasn't theoretical anymore. It was live. He leaned toward his mic to notify legal, but paused. They wouldn't act. Not against Cole. Not without permission. Instead, he messaged Britta directly. Do not override. Contract is bound to E-19 Protocol 9-minute window active. Only originator token can validate. She read it. She looked up at Cole. Then, she said nothing. Just kept typing. Because sometimes, fear is stronger than protocol. Back in the boardroom, Michael tried again. Sir, the system's rejecting manual entry. We're locked out of the execution chain. It's hard-coded. Ugh. Cole's confident veneer cracked for just a second. Escalate it. To who? Michael asked. The owner of the token is no longer with the company. Silence. One chair creaked. Someone cleared their throat. No one spoke. No one said her name. But everyone knew whose system they were trying to override. And at that exact moment, across town, Elena Hart sat behind the wheel of her car, staring blankly through the windshield, while a countdown ticked quietly inside a server rack no one could see. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't watching. But the system was. And it didn't recognize anyone in that room. No one saw it coming. Not the legal team. Not the engineers. And definitely not Cole Maddox. At first, they thought it was a system hiccup. A rare delay. Something a restart could fix. But the system didn't crash. It refused. No override worked. No admin access passed. Every click, every keystroke led back to the same silent wall. Then, someone quietly, cautiously opened the metadata logs. And there it was, buried at the bottom, untouched since the contract had been created. System Architect, E. Hart. Signature Token. Exclusive. Non-transferable. Override rights. None. The room stopped breathing. Cole leaned over the screen, his voice brittle. Can we reassign the token? Michael shook his head. No, sir. It's encrypted. The token can't be duplicated or substituted. It's bound to her identity, her biometric seal. Another pause. He added, more quietly. It was hard-coded. Like, months ago. Cole's face turned pale. Because now he remembered. That security patch. That document he signed off in a hallway meeting. New deep review. New questions asked. Just a 5-minute glance, and a smug, dismissive nod. If it makes us look secure to the board, stamp it. He had approved it himself. Across the room, Britta slowly turned away from her tablet. Her mouth opened, but no words came. They hadn't just fired a senior director. They'd cut out the only person who could execute the system they were still depending on. And now the system was responding accordingly. They hadn't lost the contract yet. But they had lost the only key that could save it. And sitting quietly in her car, engine off, hands still, Elena Hart let the moment unfold exactly as it was meant to. She wasn't vengeful. She wasn't watching their panic in real time. But the code was. The system had remembered what they had tried to forget. And now, It was showing them what happened when you remove the architect but leave her blueprint behind. Have you ever watched people try to erase your work, only to realize they can't function without it? 9:10 a.m. The windows on the 38th floor glared under full sun, but inside the boardroom, the atmosphere had chilled. Cole Maddox's voice was sharper now, clipped, fast, defensive. He paced the room with a tablet in hand, throwing out phrases like manual override, fallback authorization, and tech redundancy. But none of it mattered. Nothing was moving. Every attempt to execute the contract returned the same response. Token validation failed. Action denied. Someone from finance whispered, "How long do we have?" Michael glanced down. His voice barely rose above a breath. "Less than 2 minutes." Across the city, Elena watched traffic crawl past her windshield. She hadn't moved. The dashboard clock ticked forward with eerie calm. She could feel the weight of time and out pressing, not chasing, but arriving. Exactly as designed. She had already made the choice. Not out of spite. Not even out of pride. But because she had finally understood something that had taken her 2 decades to learn. You can't protect people who don't believe you built the walls. Back in the war room, Noah Delgado sent one final system ping. It was a courtesy-owned last check. The server returned a blinking status. T000014. Final authorization unverified. Protocol E19 sunset engaged. He leaned back in his chair, his heart sinking. And then it happened. 9:12 a.m. Across every secure terminal, a single line of text appeared. Contract invalidated, signature token missing, global execution revoked. No noise. No siren. Just finality. Helion Aerospace's legal team responded seconds later. Their message was short, clinical, and lethal. Signature mismatch constitutes material breach of trust. Engagement terminated effective immediately. In less than 60 seconds, the $3.02 billion deal vaporized. Gone. And with it, the one thing Cole Maddox had hung his entire career on. From the parking structure near Lincoln Square, Elena saw the first ripple of fallout. 2 employees stepped outside the building, phones pressed to their ears, eyes wide. One of them she recognized from the finance team looked hollow, already bracing for the storm. She didn't feel joy. She didn't feel regret either. Only that strange, weightless quiet that comes when a machine completes its final task, perfectly. The system hadn't failed. It had functioned. Exactly as intended. And it wasn't done yet. The email came at 10:25 a.m. It didn't arrive with fanfare. No urgent subject line, no blinking red exclamation mark. Just a quiet ping in her inbox, like any other message. But Elena knew before she even opened it, this wasn't just any offer. It was from Zurich. From Helion Aerospace's global office. Sent directly by Matthias Kruger, strategic director. No assistant. No intermediary. She tapped the message open. "We understand the Stratus Edge agreement has been rendered null due to internal compliance failure. However, we would like to move forward on new terms. Not with Stratus Edge. With you." Elena sat up straighter in her seat. Not out of surprise. Out of recognition. They weren't trying to salvage what was lost. They were choosing to rebuild through her. "We've followed your work for years," the message continued. "We're prepared to offer full autonomy, lead authorization, and a clean contract under your direction. We understand you've already registered HeartLink systems. We're ready when you are." She exhaled slowly. She had filed the LLC paperwork for HeartLink 8 months earlier. Quietly, cautiously. Not because she was planning to leave Stratus Edge, but because she had finally stopped trusting that they'd protect what she'd built. HeartLink wasn't meant to be a company. It was meant to be a backup plan for her identity. Something of her own if ever the ground gave way. And now, the world was offering to meet her there. She opened her iPad, switched to the secured portal she hadn't touched in months. The HeartLink domain was still live. The technical framework still stable. The authentication self, the same architecture that had brought down a billion-dollar deal, was hers, entirely. No co-signature. No internal oversight. No one to clean up her mess. Just her name, at the top of the contract. Elena Hart. Founder, Principal Architect, HeartLink Systems. She downloaded the draft. Read it slowly. Every clause reflected her voice. Every provision respected her authorship. When she reached the end, she paused. One last field blinked, waiting. Sign, execute. Voice auth required. She leaned forward. Spoke clearly. Primary architect. Elena Hart. The system confirmed. A soft chime. Then, silence. The deal was done. She sat back in her seat, letting the moment settle. Not as revenge. Not even as redemption. But as a return. She didn't need to look back at the tower behind her. Stratus Edge was already unraveling, floor by floor. And she? She was building forward. Not for applause. Not for headlines. But for something quieter, something stronger. Ownership. By noon, it was everywhere. Finance blogs. Defense industry news feeds. Even LinkedIn was ablaze with quiet speculation wrapped in polite phrasing. Stratus Edge faces critical contract void due to digital compliance error. Sources confirm former VP tied to authentication protocol no longer employed. Helion shifts direction, cites breach of trust. But Elena didn't need headlines to know what was happening. She could feel it. From the quiet seat inside a cafe 2 blocks away, she watched executives rush in and out of the building across the street. Their movements had lost rhythm. No one walked with purpose anymore, just urgency. The glass facade of Stratus Edge HQ, once sleek and unshakable, now shimmered like it had something to hide. She stirred her coffee. Still hot. Still hairs. This was the first time in years she'd had a cup that wasn't lukewarm from being forgotten mid-meeting or half-drained between conference calls. Across from her, her laptop buzzed. The HeartLink dashboard was still open, the contract from Helion now marked authorized. Her name was on every line that mattered. She hadn't stolen anything. She hadn't hacked, sabotaged, or destroyed. She'd simply removed herself. And let the architecture she created do what it was meant to do. Protect integrity. Uphold order. Respect authorship. And when no one else did, the system made the call for her. Across town, Cole Maddox was unraveling. A friend from legal had texted her just 2 words. He's sweating. In the boardroom, they were reviewing access logs, digging through digital trail after trail. They'd found the clause. They'd traced the trigger. And now, one by one, they were discovering that the system hadn't betrayed them. They'd betrayed it. Stratus Edge hadn't collapsed because someone took it down. It collapsed because someone stopped holding it up. Elena knew they'd try to walk it back. They'd call it an oversight. A glitch. A policy misalignment. They might even reach out to her, dangling offers, pretending the last 4 hours were a misunderstanding. But it didn't matter anymore. She had reclaimed what they tried to erase. Her legacy hadn't been written in press releases or award plaques. It had been written in the lines of code no one bothered to read. In the systems no one appreciated until they broke. In the silence that followed, a signature that never came. She took another sip of coffee. Let the quiet hold her. Not as a woman who had been replaced, but as the one they would never be able to replicate. The notification faded from her screen. Contract. Finalized. HeartLink Systems Authorization, eHeart. That was it. No applause. No standing ovation. No handshake waiting on the other side. Just confirmation. A quiet, simple confirmation that her name still held power. Elena closed her laptop gently and leaned back in her seat. The cafe was nearly empty now. Outside, the streets buzzed with people who had no idea that $1 billion shift in aerospace partnership had just taken place without ceremony, without press, and without Stratus Edge. She watched the sunlight catch the lip of her coffee cup. Everything about the moment was still. No storm, no rage. Just peace. Or something close to it. She thought about that morning, how it started. She thought about the boardroom. The silence. The sentence, "You're done, Elena." And now, only hours later, she wasn't done at all. She was free. For years, she had stayed. Loyal. Consistent. Quiet. She had believed in the mission. In the structure. In the promise that good work speaks for itself. But the truth is sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you pour yourself into something, thinking it will protect you because you protected it. Sometimes you give them a system, and they try to cut you out of it. And when that happens, you have two choices. You can chase validation from the people who erased you, or you can rebuild, brick by brick, on your own terms with your name on every foundation stone. Elena chose the second. And maybe that was the real lesson. It's not about revenge. It's not even about being right. It's about remembering that you were never just a placeholder. Eyes. You were never the problem they needed to fix. You were the pattern they couldn't copy, the standard they couldn't meet, the voice in the system they tried to mute but couldn't replace. Because usefulness isn't something you outgrow. It's something you carry. So if you've ever been dismissed, replaced, rewritten in someone else's narrative. If someone tried to use your work while deleting your name, let this be your reminder. You don't have to scream. You don't have to break things. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away. And let the silence prove how much they needed your voice. If this story spoke to you, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Revenge Tales for more stories just like this one. Because your legacy? It's never what they say about you after you're gone. It's what still works because of you. Long after you've left the room.